think everybody has one. So good morning, everyone. If there is still someone who needs a copy of the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas, just let us know by raising your hand and we can bring you one. And we'll begin our opening prayers in the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas, starting on page 2. Namo Raya. While seeing that all phenomena neither come nor go, solely for the sake of all beings, Supreme Guru and Protector Chenrezig, at all times I respectfully pay homage to you with my body, speech, and mind. The perfect Buddhas, source of all benefit and happiness, arise from having accomplished the true Dharma. Since that depends on knowing the practices, I'll explain the way of Bodhisattvas. Having now gained this great wisdom and fortune so difficult to find, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence, listen, reflect, and meditate day and night without distraction. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. Attachment to loved ones churns like water. Hatred for enemies rages like fire. In the darkness of ignorance, one forgets what to adopt and what to avoid. Abandon your homeland. This is the way. When negative places are abandoned, disturbing emotions will gradually decline. Without distraction, attention to the virtue naturally grows. When the mind becomes clear, certainty in the Dharma arises. Live alone in seclusion. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. Family and longtime companions will part from each other. Possessions gained with effort will be left behind. Consciousness, the guest, will leave the guest house of the body. Let go of all worldly concerns, the way of a Bodhisattva. In bad company, the three poisons grow stronger, and the activities of learning, reflecting, and meditating decline, and love and compassion are lost. Give up such companions. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. When one follows a true spiritual friend, faults will dissolve, and good qualities will grow, like the waxing moon. This friend more dear than your own body. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. Who can worldly gods themselves imprisoned in samsara protect? Therefore, seek refuge in the three jewels, the undeceiving source of refuge. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. The Buddha taught that all the unbearable suffering of the lower realms is caused by wrongdoing. Therefore, never act wrongfully, even at the cost of your life. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. Like a dewdrop grass, the happiness of the three worlds vanishes in but an instant. Strive for the supreme state of never-changing liberation. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. When mothers who have loved you since beginningless time are suffering, what good is your own happiness? Therefore, give rise to bodhicitta in order to liberate infinite sentient beings. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. All suffering without exception comes from seeking your own happiness. The perfect Buddhas are born from the altruist. Therefore, truly exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. Even if driven by great desire, steals all your wealth, or lets others steal it, dedicate to them your body, possessions, and all virtues of the three times. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. Even if someone cuts off your head when you haven't done anything wrong, take all the negative deeds upon yourself through the power of compassion. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. Even if others slander you throughout a billion worlds, in return speak with a loving mind of their good qualities. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. Even if someone exposes your hidden faults and insults you in front of others, View that person as a teacher and bow with respect. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone you have cared for as dearly as your own child regards you as an enemy, love that person even more, as a mother would her ailing child, of a bodhisattva. Even if someone of equal or lower status, driven by pride, treats you with disdain, respectfully place them on your crown as your teacher. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Though you may be impoverished, or gripped by disease, and tormented by spirits, never lose courage, but take on the misdeeds and the pain of all beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Though you may be famous and revered by many, and are as rich as the wealth god himself, having seen that worldly fortune is without essence, do not be proud. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If the enemy, your own anger, is not tamed, subduing outer enemies will only make them increase. Therefore, subdue your own mind with the army of love and compassion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Sensory pleasures are like salt water. The more you drink, the greater your thirst. Abandon at once all things that give rise to clinging attachment. This is the way of a bodhisattva. The way things appear is your own mind. Mind itself primordially transcends fabricated extremes. Just this, do not create concepts of subject and object. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When you come across that attract you, like beautiful rainbows in summertime, do not regard them as real and abandon clinging attachment. This is the way of a bodhisattva. All suffering is like the death of your child in a dream. How exhausting it is to hold illusory appearances as real. Therefore, when you meet with difficult circumstances, see them as illusory. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When even one's body must be given up when aspiring for enlightenment, what need is there to mention material things? Therefore, practice generosity without hope of reward or karmic results. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If you lack moral discipline, you cannot accomplish even your own purpose. So wanting to achieve the purpose of others is truly absurd. Therefore, protect your discipline without concern for worldly existence. This is the way of a bodhisattva. For bodhisattvas who desire a wealth of virtue, all harm is like a precious treasure. Without hostility, be patient with everyone. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even hearers or solitary realizers who accomplish only their own purpose strive as if putting out a fire on their head. Seeing this, practice with diligence the source of good qualities for the sake of all beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Emotions are destroyed by insight grounded in calm abiding. Knowing this, cultivate meditative concentration that purely transcends the four formless absorptions. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Without wisdom, the other five perfections alone are not enough to reach complete enlightenment. Thus, combined with skillful means, develop the wisdom that does not distinguish among the three spheres. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Unless you examine your own confused idea, look like a practitioner, but not be acting like one. Therefore, always examine yourself and abandon confusion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If you are driven by disturbing emotions and talk about another bodhisattva's faults, it is actually to your own detriment. So don't mention the faults of those who have entered the great vehicle. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Concern for gain and respect causes conflict and a decline in the activities of learning, reflecting, and meditating. So abandon attachment to your circle, relations, and benefactors. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Harsh words disturb others' minds and thus diminish the practice of a bodhisattva. Therefore, abandon harsh speech, which is unpleasant to others. This is the way of bodhisattva. When disturbing emotions become habitual, it is difficult to reverse them with antidotes. Thus, the soldier of mindfulness wields antidotes as weapons and destroys disturbing emotions, such as attachment, the moment they start to arise. This is the way of a bodhisattva. In brief, wherever you are and whatever you are doing, always examine the state of your mind. Act to accomplish the purpose of others through constant mindfulness and awareness. This is the way of a bodhisattva. With the wisdom of threefold purity, dedicate all the virtue gained from having made such effort toward enlightenment. Dedicate it to clear away the suffering of infinite beings. This is a bodhisattva. In accordance with the words of the holy ones regarding the meaning of the sutras, tantras, and their commentaries, I have written these 37 verses on the ways of a bodhisattva for those who wish to train on the bodhisattva's path. This composition will not be admired by the learned because my intellect is poor and my education is limited. However, I have followed the sutras and the words of the holy ones, so I believe these ways of a bodhisattva are not mistaken. Still, because the vast deeds of bodhisattvas are difficult to grasp by simple-minded beings like myself, I beg the forgiveness of the holy ones for the mass of my errors, such as contradictions and inconsistencies. By the virtue arising from that, may all beings give rise to relative and ultimate bodhicitta, and thereby become like the protector, Chenrezig, abide in the extremes of existence or peace.
Giving on a Georgia, Lapata of the cruise, taken down by one teacher, getting your sounds are low, Pambo to Bajaran, Wakajula, and the woman she gave the subject with your money. Rasim to go most of those ever saw Romijo, the Assassin Damajala, Chudin, your song about your Gila song. Since the dance, she started so at the Nikatan, Zuba told her, Zuba, a part of the smart code and the Namila, the Zuba, the Hadakarchiari. To some children, Rinpoche, the Jews and nude, you're not Jews on board with the no mina, there is a Torah or repeated away, there is Zubat and nude away, there is Zubat in the Chatan passing quantity, corner of the song, the passing real and Ninkang Sona or Mambo Sona. The young to John Tanti, Mambo Sina, and Court of William, and Nato Young. Palamna Yakosa, our best away. Don't like the Zuba, she was don't chicla, and do your the inner Zubala, Katik Tadanga Zuba song. These Zuba that Roma Tamil, Shanta Tamil Zuba, the Ramji, name to Hale, Yakatawa Chedi, Yachu, then I took Yari. That is the matter. Goga, Changa, Chishi, that have been chilly. That is the moon on that mantle, Haja the watching boy. Tita Gunji dinner, Satan, Kalaya Buyoma, Desa Wohoma, Yena, the Tampachiti, Yonti, Hark on the remark in the Peculiare. The Katik Tadana Zubashi by the tree, Randoni, Chinami, the Geogami, the Carniore. The Katik Tadana Zubat, Benamalari Bataver. Then Nibate, New Zealand, Jamaica, so was so good. New Zealand, Jamaica, was all that. New Zealand, she did on some. Tell the Sansen, Saha, Nigger, she did on some about watching Boyore. Then he cheated on some the New Zealand, Kaiju, beautiful quarter town. 오 당한 나니 코로만 거동아 난 미상 가지고 조금도 상거려 술도 그 상거리 말이 세상에 매일을 초로 성나요 레소니아 감정만 시당할 거지 그러게 주의를 이러다 세상에 되는 오늘 강력 되거든 별 칼라서는 시 뭐가 들을 때 칼라라 세상 두두 째요 가지는 세상에 찌영이요 대회는 세상 대자리에서 세열을 맞지 봐 Terdi giace shawara peje sono gare nuzi tikka me sa fu do na saden sema jin tamji kwa ka ko rista saden tamji de ja de kwa ka ta ta mo zha ba zo zo ko ri ti sui dang je de ma ri o rang xie dang zhao de rang xie dang de wu zhong song na be le de dang so 한국 척보 조선은 도스만 가는 조트거리 때 랑게 시당 저거 랑게 시당 조리서는 한국 저거 강수를 채만은 조트거리 도는 조트거리 조들이 서로 이 시당 홍기대 조니 마상치 랑게 시당이 조는 상거리지 약간 막 거기 시당 통서 막 추시당 통서 도시당 막 도매산도 야 며칠 전에서 딱히 잡아먹고 그렇지 보면서 당가 그 짝짝상 고사만 다시 나오는 아니 그 매대 곧 도등시 가지나 지으리 지으리 되는데 뉴질이 때문에 하면서 와서 대 당시 고토잖아 시달다고 신에 이 서로 열라 맞고 열들 시당 지와지 시당 김시 강장 지고 시당에 가야 노소 3대 매바 차로 3대 하고 시라 매바 차로 코고왕들 상대 지다오는 별 조성보를 시단기는 이 조디 지다 윤지다 전에 뒤용디디 뒤상대디 지 라상 이 루가가 사조 도와리도 뭐 특이도 들라가 투가라서 다 세바라서 이런 거요래 이렇게 남시당대 하고 선서는 시당대 거고 철시라고 쓰는 시당에서는 강의 석시당 통서는 막 독점은 나는 요래지 이 고수 송송시 고정아 시당 통이 우고도 없이 이제 미래에서 말이 제로드시 바투당지 본동시 다 작노 바타면 되게 시당대 야 송송 비팽도 없이 그래서 시당 소문이 좀 시당대 좀을 때 하고 거서
So we were speaking about a verse on patience yesterday, which was 27, and this actually of the 6 parameters is really the most important, the practice of patience. It is like patience is like a precious contain. Like a vessel that can contain a very precious substance. If you don't have a container to contain it, then the substance will be spoiled. So now, regarding the parameter of patience, regarding any of the parameters, for example, the parameter of generosity, those scholars can teach on that, even just one of them, just a single day. For example, on the parameter of generosity, they can speak about that all day long. But often when we hear too much, when we speak too much, and again, it gets more difficult to understand it too, especially for people like myself. So what's the essence of it, if we summarize it all? So the first kind of patience is the patient endurance that and patiently endures hardships such as heat and cold. And now that refers to hardships that we endure for the sake of the Dharma. For example, I always feel that the disciples who come here, they have to endure so many hardships. And it's very difficult. And I'm quite amazed by the hardships that they're willing to endure, actually. For example, in summertime, it's very hot here. We have summer teachings, but people still insist on coming anyways, and they make it work and they stay here. And then in wintertime, like now it's very cold and we have the winter teachings, all kinds of hardships. So knowing that, I also feel that if we don't make the best use of their time, it would be really a very big fault, a big transgression. Because it's not easy to be here. It's not the best, most comfortable day, maybe not the best food to eat, but still people come here because they understand the quality of the holy Dharma. So they are willing to endure all sorts of hardships, the hardships of heat and cold and so forth, for the sake of the Dharma. And that's a kind of patience. For example, that's what Milarepa did. And often, when it comes to Dharma practice, we do endure a lot of hardships when we practice. So that's the second patience, is being patient with harm doers who attack one. And so that is really related to that verse here, all those who do harm are like a precious treasure. And this one is particularly important in the practices of the Bodhisattva and the secret mantra path. And just this line here, all those who do harm are like a precious treasure, is very meaningful. So what are those who do harm? When somebody triggers your anger, they make you angry. And that makes you realize, oh, I have a lot of anger actually. And often we don't realize that, but it's there, hidden in our mind. And we just feel sort of annoyed with everything, and we just want to go somewhere and be alone. And we don't want to talk to anyone, to live at mountain retreat, not recognizing that it's actually because we are angry. We want to hide, but actually what remains in our mind unknowingly is that anger. And so then you go to this mountain retreat, and actually it still comes up there. You keep getting annoyed with other things. The birds singing, and then the deer constantly coming and so on, or the animals there. And even if the food is not so nice, you get a little bit angry about that. So constantly it arises. And that is the real enemy. It's your own anger. Not the outer object. And so Deva had given a good example. He said, now if you want to avoid any kind of harm doer in this world, and for example, let's say this whole world is covered in thorns, you might want, trying to avoid all of these thorns, you might want to cover the whole earth with leather, so you don't have to walk on those thorns anymore. So for example, nowadays we make roads and things like that. But actually, realistically, nobody can do that. Nobody can cover the whole planet in leather. So Shantideva therefore said, if you recognize the enemy to be your own hatred, then the best thing you can do is to put on leather shoes that are strong, and then you can walk on any kind of thorn and it won't affect you. You don't have to cover the whole world in leather. You can just wear leather shoes. So that means you recognize the fault in your own anger. Then you can face any difficulty. You can walk on thorns, you can walk on rocks, and so on. You wouldn't get angry at the outer objects, the one who is triggering the anger, but you would recognize the fault within your own anger. So often people, they blame those who trigger their anger to be the source of their frustration. They feel like running away to somewhere where there is no other person. They just say, I want to go away, I want to go somewhere where there is nobody, where I don't have to talk to any. Meanwhile, their anger remains hidden in their mind, like poison. And so that is the real enemy that is to be recognized. And so then, when it arises, you instantly should see, there it is, I'm angry. And what's the harm in that? The harm in this anger is that it cuts you off from love. So the first thing actually that happens is you lose your wisdom, and then losing your wisdom, you lose your love. For example, if you have a very good friend that has been your friend for a very long time, if one day you get angry at them, you forget all of that love, and then immediately you act out with body and speech in a harsh way. You show them an angry face and you say mean things, and so forth. And then you start arguing and fighting. You might even get into like a fist fight, and in the end, maybe you even kill somebody that you have loved before. So if you recognize that with awareness, instantly see that there it is, I'm angry. This is my real enemy. This is like poison. And the only way for me to know that I have it, someone who triggers it. It is also said that if you don't have anyone to your anger, then how are you going to practice patience? So when somebody triggers your anger, it makes you realize that it's actually there. So we need actually those who trigger our anger. And therefore, Jigme Lingpa also had said that those harm doers and evil ones, evil spirits and so on, or these obstacles, they are all like a stepping stone or an enhancement to our meditation practice. So we should not actually see those who trigger our anger as the ones that have that fault. The fault should be seen within our own anger.
밤이 봐 정말 진실이 아주 정토고래 대탐지 조바를 고래 대제단고 나 제단의 중장장 주인은 세상 남부 잡아서 차나 따지 소살그 람 토성 사살그 거 드니 배나 가지 상지 장장 그 사바체미가 고도는 이 제단지 제토고래 배 강리 다랑지 뭐나 당초 카라 자마사나 카사고 보고되게 뭐 자원상지 빵부터 강에 동에 같이 쬐는 보지는 고소라고 하고요. 이 삼바체미 이자동잖아. 이 양식당을 통해 이 상속세배 저와서 상속 생은 뭐지? 세상도 저도 세상 삼hund년 정도로 했지. 이 상하가 남들 제와지. 근데 다 rinchi 때 땅 성송지대 대군이 때 상하가 따와서 하고 성천은 유몽 이시에 되었 유몽을 랑진시다라 동하가 됐다고 그래. 들어가지고 라마자. 그래서 유몽 이시에 저 강리 줄 그래. 답에 샘이제 대신 뭐 그런 얘니 다 왔다마 샘이제 그런 남가다 이제 딱 말이지. 로베티 차당 모두 똑같이 가지는들이 남가집에 용한다고들이 사장 조장들이 잡아 가라서 비누를 내마고 재는 거래. 이제 로베 쪽으로지. 이제 소리 주는 말이지. 이제는 다들이 시당 때또 줘야 되게. 빼는 미들 달 로니셔 30달러들 조고 조모지냐도 되냐. 니 맞기를 시당 아니. 때 탁탁했다. 로니셔가 저한테 달라서 까들이 시당 초와 박차 참아 떨고 그래. 떨송을 까들이 올라때는 시당 매랑다고 시들. 시간이 시당 최고 제가까지 생내로 쳤대는 내로 이제 솔딱다 랩들. 내로 이제 솔딱다 랩을 오 시당이 눈에 패기독스. 시당 제는 되는 도차대는 남도체. 시당 대다가 남도체. 우리도 먹대다가 남도체는 다들 유몽 독성대 때라 제랑 말이 좋지. 아니 먹대고 아니 먹대 쪽 대체요래. 그들은 제때 딱 성주와지. 배나 이네 상동 공대네요. 샘대 속 싸워 촉제면서 니마서 시당 치고를 깎게 제 무슨잖아. 그 저거들 로망볼 고르지가 타고 걸들이 대외를 기대다 정성 상하가 탑신들이 문제는 뭐지 됐다 정. 근데 소탈던 상신상들은 정말 들이 매일매일 또 제체는 소탈을 때는 상신이 또 없지. 상신이 또 없지. 상하는 문이 다른 뭐지 때 인성지. 뭐 속적고 이제 소를 내버려요. 그런 것서 지나 니 거기도 들이 소를 하고 또 하고 그러더니 또 먹고 이제 소를 말하면서 오 니들 배는 물론 지는 못이는 그런 니 거기도 그래지. 수도 파올라고 그래. 야. 대체다 그래. 다들 니 가는 지가 검적이다. 대로 차음을 이제 됐다 성지. 니 대냐음선이 벌다 줄란 것 같네. 들랑 줄랑 세시고 그래. 따와지 대다고 하고서 검지 다시 좋아서 주바들 들면 다 주토 가서 주토 몸을 내가 되지나. 레지 받은 미도 다 차들 다 참이 가봐들 저 내가 되지고 들이 뒤에 값들이 끼인데 뭐 참들 고소는 다 지금 고소되다 무의진이 되기라 들이 뒤에 냠슬이 신 다들이 팽시치보다 냠슬이 마시나들이 좀부터 다 좀하면은 다 내가 지도 매봐 주는 냠이 제도 매봐 차로래 배제다 차로래 이제는 조발한테는 삼태다고 삼태지 그 주인들이 삼태리 그림에서 생각지 못하나 들이치는 뭐 못하고 하면 잡아 치는 못 잡아 이제 삼아서 하면 되나 좀 차되나 삼태라 제와요래 들라마다 신업 탐지라 다다 잡힌 표요래 들로만은 로마 탐지 쪽전 못 차는 되는 함지 생고력을 피 디소는 되들이 라마 교신이 되라니 그처럼 들이 랑한테 이제 안도 생각 펜을 조바 다 치수에 들이 조바고 탑라 다다다디 대터 주토를 가들 바로도 스마트 가사카를 주토요래 뒤에가 질만 보여 대탐지게 삼록당은 당한 미도다웨인지 타비게 자기다 동주 네 동이나 제송 시주요래 통합에서는 동tem바티 동가리다 동주 될 동지 니바나서 드리지 사토스베 추나를 때 결과가 좋은 거요래 주사와지 동지에서
So the Buddha taught the three levels of the path of the individual liberation, the Bodhisattvas and path. And in those paths we become unmindful, we again give rise to mindfulness and so forth. So all of this actually requires the practice of patience. So we think about the faults of anger in particular over and over again. This is mainly how we do it according to individual liberation. We really think about the faults and the consequences of anger, and to the point where then it doesn't arise any longer. So it is abandoned. And then there's others who deal with anger by cultivating only love and compassion. So they develop immeasurable love and compassion. And when that arises, when immeasurable love arises, one simply can't get really angry with any longer. For example, just like a mother and her child. A mother loves her child. Only when we see the leftover foods of somebody else, then we feel disgusted. But no matter how dirty our child is, we wipe our hands without feeling that. So no matter how much trouble the child gives the mother will never hate the child. She loves the child. So just naturally, through love and compassion, the precious bodhicitta transforms. So the bodhisattva path is one of transformation, where hatred, anger is transformed into the nature of love and compassion. And on the path of the secret mantra, the Vajrayana, one takes the afflictions as the path. So one practices with them. And this is really where this precious treasure comes in. This precious treasure mentioned here really should be understood as belonging mainly to the Vajrayana path of practice. If one really understands the view of the secret mantra, one transforms the afflictions into wisdom. In the Kagyu tradition also it is said, if you understand the nature of the afflictions, then all suffering is an ocean of nectar. Form the afflictions into wisdom. But how can we do that? First, your mind is Buddha nature. So on the basis, primordial, it is completely pure. It is like space. There is no defilement. It is completely pure. And only temporarily, it is like clouds have appeared in the sky, and temporarily the mind is obscured by these thoughts of attachment, aversion, and ignorance. So the clouds appear in the sky temporarily, and then they do all kinds of things. They rain, they snow, they thunder, and so on. All kinds of good and bad things. But it's only a temporary obscuration. The basis of your mind is never obscured. Any fault that arises of your true nature, but it's a temporary fault. Anger, for example, is an extremely powerful affliction. For example, when there's two people who have stayed together as good friends 20 or 30 years, one day something happens, they get angry at each other, and in that moment, all of their love that they have had for each other for like 20 years is destroyed almost instantly. So the anger has this power to destroy all of that love that you have had for such a long time. So it is a very powerful affliction, and when you look at its nature, it is mirror-like wisdom. So when strong anger arises, look at the nature. You will see that when strong anger arises, you actually come to the basic, the fundamental nature of the mind. And when you realize that, you will feel that actually the anger has helped my practice. And then in this way, as each time it arises, you practice with it in this way. You take it as the path. And you do the same with attachment or with ignorance, with the three poisons. And then eventually, no matter how many afflictive emotions arise, they become like an enhancement to your practice, and therefore like a precious treasure. And this practice is very powerful, even in just a short time. For example, if you were to go into retreat and practice Shama and Vipassana for a very long time, during that time you might achieve some tranquility and stability, but you do not have that force of clarity. And on the other hand, if you get angry one day and in that moment you really practice with it and you recognize its nature, then that is actually more powerful than having meditated for even some years on shamatha and vipassana. And that is why, that is the skillful means of the secret mantra, is why it is referred to as a precious treasure. And then on the path of individual liberation and the Bodhisattva path, we gradually and slowly the power of our awareness increases. So the Bodhisattva path is more powerful than the path, and the secret mantra path is more powerful than the Bodhisattva path. So on the secret mantra path becomes patience, really becomes, or harm doers really becomes a precious treasure for the one who practices patience. So when any very powerful afflictive emotion arises, you come to the fundamental nature of the mind. It actually also happens when you fall asleep and you go to dream. You also come to the basic nature, the fundamental nature of the mind. But because we are ignorant, we never recognize that. So therefore there's also the practice of the dream yoga where we recognize luminosity at the time when we are sleeping. For example, there also was this Mahasiddha who would always sleep, and actually through only sleeping, even at daytime, he would realize the luminosity of mind. So this is from a Vajrayana perspective. If you recognize that anything can become a condition, so anything for practice, so anything is a precious treasure. So then all of that needs to be merely activities. So first of all, you have to understand the view, and then you have to habituate to it, practice it, but then finally it has to be brought into your daily life. For example, when you're working in a Dharma center and so on, all of this then becomes practice, or whatever you do. Even though it seems that you're doing all kinds of things, and you might even think that I'm just doing ordinary things, I'm making phone calls and things like that and talking to people, and then it makes you even feel frustrated. But actually, if you know how to practice, so patience is very much related to sustaining the continuum of love. Have that, then a person who has that will be happy in their lives, and a happy person actually said to also live longer, and they will have white hair and have a happier life and better relations. So it's generally also related to one's physical well-being, and also, of course, mental well-being. And then it is also related to the longevity of the guru, actually. Now you've offered a long life guru. And when disciples do that, actually, the one thing that extends the life of the guru is when they cultivate love and get along with each other and don't fight. Actually, that naturally benefits your surrounding, and it naturally contributes to the long life of the guru. It's also good for your health and your own mental well-being. So therefore, among all the practices, really, patience is really the most precious one. If you're able to practice patience and you work for a Dharma center, for example, whatever becomes a practice of the 6 paramitas. And nowadays we have centers everywhere and people working for centers. There's many people. And if you know that point of practice, you will be able to do it, and you will feel that this is practice. This is the 6 paramitas. You will be able to go out there and meet the people and talk to them and so on. So actually in the Gelugpa tradition, there's this mainly in the Gelugpa tradition, there's this practice called the 4 ways of honoring disciples, and that's very much related to this actually. For example, to speak nicely to them and to act in accordance with what one has said, and to act in a meaningful way, and to also be generous towards them. And so about those 4 gathering disciples, again, the great masters can teach you more about that, but this is really the Bodhisattva's conduct too. It's really related to the practice of patience.
좀 찍들 같이 모두 요래서 반데 강해지나 서로를 끼리는 마디바 끼인 가나 마도 랑시당데 문제 있잖아 다시당 하고 서고 요래배나 하장 같이 오래 우리 끼인 방법이 방데 저만치를 좋아하죠 서로 끼인 방법을 가지는 용어 방법을 요 말이 제가 이 말에서 다 조박을 다시 말했더니 또 2-3일 동안 잡아주고 쏜 거예요. 다들 망고 쏜 거예요. 돈을 다시 받는 정상적으로 책을 떼놨더니 점지에 소감이 받아 돈 담는 점지에 또 많이 되는 되는 정상적으로 와 쏜 거여서 얘는 가르치는 라지 정상으로 제와요. 단지 말이 다 되리 단지 용인 정상 줘야요 말이 동아지 하고는 단지를 말하는 정상 라지 제도 단지 하고 말이 단지 의지는 정상들이 상태들이 정상 제도 대회는 가심 포장이더니 나도 가서 다니더니 무슨 정상 제형도 없이 상축심은 장나 사와시 미치는 정상이야 매번 차원을 기본을 살아야지.
So to summarize all of that into one important point, it all comes down to one important point, and that do not look at the outer object or the condition that has made you angry, but recognize your own anger directly. So that's most important, because as it is said here in the text, we cannot destroy enemies on the outer level. The more we try to destroy them, avoid them, the more they will arise. We can't avoid the afflictive emotions in this. That's one point. And secondly, when bring patience to its furthest limits, there is the third kind of patience, and that is the patience that is unafraid with regard to the meaning of empty. So this is a fear, and so where the basis on which this fear arises is probably the seeming contradiction between the twofold truth. That is, karma is infallible. On the other hand, on the ultimate level, everything is empty of self-nature. So that fear arises, and a sense of fear arises. And sometimes fear arises just naturally for reason. That's also related to that, and that's actually a sign of self-grasping. Actually, for as long as we grasp at the self, there is no end. Even if one understands the meaning of emptiness, if one is still grasping at a self, fear will still arise. And generally, this self-grasping is really hard to recognize, but actually it is recognized on the basis of fear. When this I arises, something has happened to me, then there it is, this I has arisen. It's directly related to fear. For example, there were some practitioners who practice POA. Sometimes in the practice, naturally all thinking stops, and then suddenly fear arises. And that is because not based on a motivation of bodhicitta. If you base the practice on bodhicitta, on the four immeasurables, then fear wouldn't arise. So this is most important.
Rado bacho tupanya gola be shordo tar tung to de yonti jongeke tung to ba jaselangi so the so tba chonga pala yang songuyore o betung da nani to chadam chan de chung cha de yore trimso sanchok sengu be chana de to tokuyore 동병을 했을 때 다다 뭐서 이제 감들이 양주 같이 모여래 다 체니 체도 남년지 밤에 이거 다시는 진짜는 밤에 내가 찍은다고 네 강의들 네 체디 좀 체달라 신의 주밤에서 서박 소말이데 체니 체도 깔리 같이 잡고 가리도 다리 직접 오면 제버스 요로 다다다 대리들이 차당 모습 박차대 생고 돌아 이제 성성을 대버지 다 탑대요. 차당 모습을 내마오지 탑대요지. 어느 다서 조금 정도 용티 다 삼바당 희지게 답을 추석을 내가지나 되게 랑라 핑바당 인을 대와 뒤를 매바 총총 계속 당이 딱 야시들 당이 물어서 정치 문도가 며칠 가을에 가는 하장 중심 벨 얘나티 주대 그래서 나가리 딱 이피글로 당진디 니고 이피글로서 양당한테 야고 산속선 맞지 다 지어면야 되는 제가 이피글로티 내가 다토 니 되려 토요래 르마가 체지서 쪽을 내나요 제가 전에 되고 깍요 말이 직진들 때 가고요래 레도 소나로 맡았나 다 대회나 생들 많은 거야 말이 bes어 말이 르냐와는 로요 말이지 샘냐와는 로요지 저 샘냐만은 로 동가리 다 다지는 유모베 디라고 그때 로아로 단 참원도 오늘 다 저거산지 인빈스를 때 상촉 샘들 다 조각을 따고 양지양들 때 야야 대기 좀 용띠 중에 가래 용띠 30중 사촉스를 에 대답을 사는 단거에 데려다나 내가 지기와 중지 생자신 뭐 생긴 탐지 또 인상 대로 사는 단들이 내가 사서 생들이 다 삼지에서 다 치고 인상들이 답세게 된 돈도고요 용이 가리다 3년째 하고 그랬지 대한 조각다 보자 대조각을 조각 3년째다 보자 다 용이 가리 3년째래지
Next is the verse on diligence, number 28. Even hearers or solitary realizers who accomplish only their own purpose strive as if putting out a fire on their head. Seeing this, practice with diligence the source of good qualities for the sake of all beings. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. Here, there is also a difference between the way someone of a lower vehicle or the greater vehicle practices. So striving only for their own purpose is that even if we strive, make a great effort for our own purpose, results will still be small. If we make a slight effort with a motivation, there will be a great result. But this is also related to the worldly ways, actually. From day and night, we work, we make effort only for this life. So it is only for this life. In a Sakya it is said, if you cling, or whoever clings to this life, whoever is attached to this life is not a Dharma practitioner. So however hard you work for this life, however much effort you make in this life, what is the result of that? What is it for? To what end? Actually, it is for not much. What we really get from that is those imprints of attachment, aversion, and ignorance in our minds, karmas that we accumulate with those emotions. So what we really get from all of that is the cause for falling into the 3 lower realms. So the source of good qualities, that is love and compassion. And if you have that, whatever engage in, for example, a Dharma activity, will be your own benefit and lead to the happiness of others, even the slightest effort. For example, some people complete their preliminary practices, the ngundro, in this life, and it seems in this life a very minor thing to accomplish, but actually it is a big thing to accomplish if you have this motivation that it will benefit all. Because that's the whole point of the Dharma. It is to cultivate an altruistic mind. It is the antidote to self-grasping. And so that is the Dharma. We again and again put these imprints of altruism into our mind. As we said, the Dharma is a method to cultivate not yet arisen and not let it decline where it has arisen and so forth. So if you have altruism, that is the method to achieve temporary and ultimate happiness. So we have to work physically and verbally in this life. But then what it really is about, the Dharma practice, is mind. Milarepa had said, it's not the body that goes to hell, it's the mind that goes to hell. And why does the mind? It is because it grasps at the self and then gives rise to afflictive emotions, which become projected as hell. Perfect Buddhas are born from the altruistic mind. Bodhicitta must be protected by patience, over and over. So what is this source of good qualities? It is all bodhicitta. It's all a quality of bodhicitta, the source of all goodness, bodhicitta. Even if you just practice the slightest virtue, you do it for the benefit of all sentient beings. Then it becomes, so again, the source of good qualities should be understood as love and compassion. And that's, of course, also related to patience, because love and compassion sustain the protected by patience.
And job Interlude. Tata together catching in and about on a calculator. Tam Jez, send 요리 대화 당 대외 저당 대바지도 તે 가디는 라고 요리 뒤걸어서 대화 가리 오만 도리들도 대도 들로리 제발하고 물은 뭐지 대도 저들 가리 뒤에 추천 뭐지래 말로 주도 초바트 집스 저래 초바트 집아 추천 집아 강에서 나 돈 집어도 체는 것도 나sam도 다 좋아해 조성도 뒤 저가 상태 찍버리 상태 찍버리 소소 심피서에 내가 just 된 거나 다호 소소로 상치거든 줄 내니 대지나 나도 도저 벌어 상태 오늘 피지 내가 가리도 사 가리도 심 초와 가리도 다 빼지 버려 핀수지가 라라 피바타 지나 대와 어디 삼바다 힘이 찍버려야지 대 양당 양저팀 류가 예수 가래서 취직디 사와 가래기는 삼바다 힘이지 그쪽도 지는 대는 못치래 삼는데 대지는 대르티는 조르트 도치고이 라마나 테이지 라마사 족생을 써한데 송노래 미니스나 라미 가르치에 사제 탐지 또 사바데 사바인지 곰치 내와다 내저 내가 토리 타토 사제 고방 내직 사 족생 좋은 것이고 대다고 잡 조르트는지 고쳐주는지 산축 심대 다 시당당 차도 맞이 대왕도 마송아 또다다 공을 주바라 저와치 뭐 대다 보잖아 취직디 사와까지 뺀직디 코로 사와서래나 조다치 보던 내가 지나 내가 참아 포마리스 포마마저 직장 메시 대다 웃으면 개당장요 디 상태지 지나 호소 세블라지 뭐 차고요래 소소를 때려지 라고 제가 따타고요래 좀 말해 심조래 대회는 제일 다와서는 조르스들이 삼바다 힘제지 다와서 고쳐들이 조바가 삼제지 너무 보광도 마셔봤지 내가 레나 레로피즈는 고쳐 마셔봐 받은 이제 조바 따고 그래 고쳐들이 조바래 초벌 meditative 좀이 니 말에 삼제 탱게 누가 하는 게 따대다 내 땅이 밤밤째 또 죄송나 저거를 대로 같이 싸고 주 소마주 거다 당이 이봐 같이 되는 거 이 말을 때려 주게요 그래서 대 말이 뒤에미 봐 자로 박차도 독질 말고 그래 세고 박차도 독질 사죠 초반 meditative 쪽으로 같이 잡라들이 망중 자와는 요 말이지 대도 초반 meditative 쪽으로서 대스면 되는 세면 사촉 선대 사바의 니제지 왜 사바세 왜가서 zon에 이 류마게 딱거치도 운지만 너무 그런 뜻을 맨날 핀다 버체 핀버체 류마가 사바사바 기와리도 기와리서 막 가서나 강도 소녀 다고치 감다 차면 나들 서다 로나 예담 라송을 상학 대롱이 차야요 가이가 차고 다 삼지가 차고리 삼지 조바지가 차고리 촉발 meditative 쪽에 삼바다 이제 촉시요 말이 내가 아까 제가 줄이나 책도에서 그 팽글이 곧 조르스 쪽에 고쳐 쪽에 촉발 meditative 쪽에서 제가 비싸고 고소 지도를 납도도
So there's different kinds of diligence, and I found that to think about this is very beneficial. Sense of application, where we apply the practice. So what that means is that now we listen to Dharma teachings or we recite mantra and so on, and we say, may all beings have happiness, and the causes always say that. But now, what do we really think when we say that? How will they experience happiness when we say happiness? For example, then you recognize that I have a precious human body. I am born in the higher realms, superior birth than an animal, for example. And what's the cause of that? The cause of that is ethical discipline. Or I have a lot of possessions. And what's the cause of that? The cause of that is generosity and having made offerings. Or you think, I have a beautiful appearance and I live long, I have no illness and many good companions. That is the result of patience. But all of these together only arise from love. So when we say, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness, to achieve that, they all need love, great love. A continuum of love must be sustained within the mind. For example, if you love your companion, then how do you feel? What's that feeling when you really love? And you feel very happy. And also your companion feels very happy. It is your own benefit and others' happiness. So the only cause of happiness is love and compassion. Think about it again and again. No matter what you do with body and speech, in the world or in the Dharma, when a moment of love and compassion arise within you, again and again recognize this is truly precious. So to always recognize that is diligent in the application, actually applying the practice. You apply love and compassion. You recognize that this is my true companion. This is my true guru. It is said, for example, I supplicate to the guru that is Bodhisattva. Because why is it a guru? What do the gurus tell us? Do all the Buddhas of the 3 times tell us? They tell us practice love and compassion, cause of happiness, temporarily and ultimately. There is only one precious jewel, and that is the precious bodhicitta. Recognizing that is the diligence of application. Second is the armor-like diligence. And so that is where you recognize that the enemies of this bodhicitta, which you have identified, are hatred, jealousy, and pride, and so on. So again, this armor-like diligence is related to patience as well. And so in a mundane activity, for example, you work in a factory, you would think then, if you have this armor-like diligence, all of my, for example, have been my parents. If you think in this way, who actually wins? It's actually yourself. And also when you love others, it will make them happy. So you really gain a great result from that. The body and the speech are secondary. The mind is most important. So always to continue to apply love and compassion in your mind is the diligence of application. So to continuously place this imprint of love and compassion into your mind. The armor-like diligence to not allow the mind to become controlled by afflictive emotions and thoughts. So for example, when you go to work, you wouldn't get your colleagues and so forth, but you would regard them all with love and compassion and patience. And so that's how the armor is related to patience. And then the third kind is called the insatiable diligence. You can't get enough of practicing virtue. There's no content to practicing virtue, to body and physical and verbal virtue. So it's not just like do a little bit of practice once a day and then you're satisfied with what you have done. It's not about completing like 110 mantras or a mala round of mantras. Sometimes people say, or they ask, how many mantras do I have to recite every day? Will 10 do? So that's not how it is. You always recite the mantra, continuously actually. Ideally all the time, because we need the mantra in order to place this imprint of speech into our mind. We need bodhicitta to place an imprint into like a mind imprint, and then the mantra is the speech imprint that all need to be placed into our mind continuously. So there is not end of that. And that's why it's the insatiable diligence. No matter how much you practice, it's never enough. You'd always do more. So For the mind, that means to always sustain bodhicitta, immeasurable love and compassion, to always protect that with patience. So, of course, if you have time, you do your practice, your recitation, and of course you don't always have time to do that. But even if you don't have time, anything can become practice. Even if you don't do a recitation, speaking in a beneficial way is also practice, is also virtue. So anything can become virtuous actually, no matter what you do. It is that then wherever you go, it is a pure land, is a yidam deity, according to the secret mantra. So this is how it has to become ultimately. And how does it become that way? Only by practicing love and patience. And so that's the insatiable diligence, where there is no end. There's never enough practice. So diligence of application, the armor-like diligence, and the insatiable diligence. These three kinds of diligence, and they are explained, is really very beneficial. And so this is something I personally understood clearly. That is why I can also tell you that.
Ranga lunga chawa kari chena give us how to disappear gawayot. Give us our kari. Daji yin pipa, yin gawa tap, deva tap, yin pipa tap, tama tap, koto malama tap, te gawa tap, te tata giva te. Simji gash. The Sanji Muzakari, Sipji Tabzilla, Nikam Tato, they Gavatap, Devatap, Tungu, take a Solpingi, Lunga Sawatiki, Zina, no papa, me paper, don't touch barriers. Same day, Taranga Pinga, Rajinal, Rana Pimba, Tangina Deva. Rana Deva, Tangina Pimba, Ran Deva, something. 네 갑토린 타토 상마 유문 토고리 야자 토고리 어때 또다 이핑 사와 릉하게 이핑 사와 생론 라지 릉하 사 상보 차고요 삼로던 호피지발 가리는 티는 총을 르사와 강제마 터는 심지는 라마 세바가와 오 동바에 고티는 람상티 요지고 동바 많이 봐 Nyang tapal samti ke dong batin ti chibuk sonam sa sawaret o tin thugum do takal ma nyami che de thugum ka ke ko o tab yores sangal tab mang ka me ba ti se le nga je to che ban pha song sang ha de sang ga tab de la tab ma ta chik ta mu shi na ta khala sun nyong dor le la ta nang thong dor me ga thong thong dor na ye tu dor 대라서 왔다데 사탐지 사와 자탐지 밑장은 라디 장 통체의 배경이지 라고 통는 배경이지 대 타로 상부 탭서는 나직 손은 저냐데 사 통주 진행 민주 도와서 사지가 뭐는 돼. 나 먹긴 통체 맞체 나와의 티체 나 일을 티체 사지 사버테리 대다우도 좀도 올라가리 다음날에 오 초 가다 걸 놓아도 보면 또 꼬바리 집에 담아 초 못하다는 남과가 사지 강제래 가르소 사제라 사서 또 잡아라서 봐 나도 니반도 사갈 물론 꼬바리 집에 요말이지 너도 꼬바리 집에 담아야지 잡동 총거서 집에 담아시 될 봐요 뭐 죽을지 라고 소 조호는 속차 처음만 뭐요래 제가 하고 그래. 이런 대탐지잖아. 대탐지 사적식이 예서로 고도 라미로래. 대식도 보여래. 오, 라사만다나요. 십지 탐지를 피고 상상아. 오, 잡동 초코서 집에 담아지. 물론 당연히 그거도 아니 뭐 물론 살도 집에 담아지. 신나주 이리선 진에서 사적생 사바세미 진심진 덤제 등을 진. 야, 다공실 주 말아서 사성 때로지. Dhamma samtete, 가리도록 제토고요. 야. 라게 생면 진당진 드시대서 서로가 각각 제고요 말아. 사지가 되다 타고는 zung gang de rang zung ma zung ra la le rang la ra le ma do zung de da ta yo le san je ge zung ga ge le zhuo so
I didn't make a mark. Oh yeah. The defining characteristics of this term diligence is that diligence is when you delight in virtue. And that is whatever you do, whatever virtuous thing you do with body and speech, you enjoy doing it, you delight, you're enthusiastic about it. And so what is this root of virtue that we practice? So now we perceive a duality of self and other. At that time, when we perceive a duality, a virtue means that you do anything to make others happy, to bring joy to others. You try to not harm them. You try to not get angry at them. All of that is virtue. And it is said that if you want to please the Buddhas, make sentient beings happy. Because that is what the Buddhas have in mind. It is the temporary and the ultimate happiness of all sentient beings. You will smile at them and you will talk to them, and this nice facial expression is not fake, but it's real, bottom of your heart. It comes from a place of love. So if you only do that, then already you have accumulated all the merit. So the secret mantra provides the skillful means for doing that. In a way, it is actually said that the secret mantra teachings are rich in skillful means that require the least difficulties and those with sharp mental faculties. So the secret mantra is rich in skillful means. Even if you don't know anything, even if you can't do any certain practice, there are again skillful means for those individuals. For example, there is a liberation that you eat, or there is a liberation by seeing something that you see, or liberation by hearing, or liberation. For example, if you wear these bracelets, these wristbands with the liberation by seeing mantra, for example, if they're people and one of them wears this wristband, then all of those 100 people will be benefited. Everyone who sees that person will be benefited. Everyone will have that seed of liberation planted. So it's similar to what we mentioned before, keeping one vow. It's actually the Buddha's aspiration. The Buddha said, may everyone who sees me, everyone who hears me, everyone who thinks of me be benefited. So if we want to become like that, for example, Milarepa has said there is an instruction for the mind. For example, when you're driving in your car, you can imagine that the sky is filled with Buddhas and you're reciting mantra and you're imagining how you're paying homage to them. And then it all becomes circumambulation, actually. There's really no difference than making a circumambulation or a prostration. It's the same. So that's just one skillful means, depending on how you see things. And the other one that Milarepa said was, and then there is an instruction where eating and drinking becomes a feast. If you are mindful, actually all of this is accomplished through mindfulness. If you're mindful when you're eating, for example, your body is filled with millions of microorganisms. And nowadays people know that. And if you fill your mind with bodhicitta, then they all become deities because they also possess Buddha nature. And then you feel that my whole body is deities. And then if you eat and drink with a wish to benefit sentient beings, then it becomes really a feast offering to the deity. So that was the second instruction. And the third instruction was by Milarepa. And then there is the instruction where sleeping becomes cognition of luminosity. And so it becomes that way if you remember bodhicitta, the four immeasurables through 3 periods of the day and the 3 periods of the night. And you always remember the suffering of sentient beings. And then understood the view, the natural state of the mind, and you have habituated it, then it will be carried into the sleep state. Awareness will be sustained. So you recognize the luminosity of the dream state. So these, for example, are 3 methods, practices that we can do, and they are accomplished really on the basis of how we view things with mind. It really depends on ourselves. Diligence depends on ourselves. The Buddha himself had said that. I can give you that, but to practice it with diligence, that is up to you. So again, the defining characteristics of diligence is to delight.
나는 요번 네바 파마 그리고 때라도 아다 고독하는 게 들으면 여기 지금 오늘 세면 대봐요. 세면 대봐는 강래. 단지리. 라콘디 최고든가 욕도면 그래. 최고는 당당 욕다 충성나. 가지는 욕도 주면 최고 욕도 그래. 얘는 안 그렇고 비용다다. 다리 잡을리냐. 얘는 도당이 강래. 랑콜디 마콜 고마게 평용디 가리온 랑콜들 저거요 산지님 주 주미세지 강이 말살시 바지 심지 좀 주미세지나 말살시 바데게 지 가리 마올때 세와 동서 다가 같이 지 장가게 사제 조선은 신감당길 땅 저거요 심지 지는 심지 땅 거요 산지님 주 주미세지 심지 좀 주미세지 다른 것도 주미세. 오, 소시 봐요 그거는 삼바다 hin지 피고서 이거래. 뒤세대 쳐답대라 저쪽들이 다지다 뇽바. 다 다지디 쇼래. 다른 것도 주미세서. 대도 주미세 봤는데 땡땡 니라고든 직진 가는 공부 인성 그걸 못해요. 이제 나는 망고 무서운 거 마코 거 피용. 이리로 거 피용을 되 무슨 더 콜라 피용 되다. 제 랑고 퉁퉁 준디 미마 유인 뭐 요즘 돼야 그래. 네 바뀐 거 요것도 요마 맞. 어디다 산지가 탐만가 메바데서. 이제 다답이 하고 something 진체에 바가 진체에 바가 저거래.
For example, often people who are very sick or elderly people think that they cannot really do anything or do any, and they can't really recite different things and study and so on. But still, there's a skillful means for them too. Most importantly, cultivate faith and devotion. And then you can just spin a prayer wheel, for example. But the prayer be too big, because if it's too big, then your hand starts hurting, and then you can't always spin it. So you want to have a small prayer wheel that you turn all the time, continuously. And if it's small and light, then you will also want to spin it all the time. Nowadays in this world, people know about the many benefits of Dharma. Is also an unceasing purification of sentient beings' obscurations. So the mantra is should be seen as the deity. For example, if you recite a mantra or you spin a prayer wheel mantras, for example, Chenrezig, however many mantras, millions of mantras there are in that prayer wheel, they all emanate upon you thinking of it. For example, if you want to make offerings to all the Buddhas in the Pure Lands, then by spinning the prayer wheel, those emanate outward to the Pure Lands and make offerings there. And if you think of benefiting sentient beings, then those mantras again emanate outward and purifications of sentient beings. So the unceasing offering to the Buddhas, the unceasing purification of sentient beings, and then third, the unceasing accomplishment of siddhi for oneself. So your own accomplishment is achieved by gaining mindfulness and awareness of this wish to benefit sentient beings all the time. And in this way, your self-reflective emotions will gradually melt away. Now, through only spinning a prayer wheel or practicing the mantra. Rinpoche also said that such samadhi, like these 3 continuations, are very rare in this world. And it is actually a skillful means, and many of its benefits are mentioned in the tantras as well, the benefits of visualizing mantra garland and reciting the mantra and so on. And it's the same for actually spinning a prayer wheel. So it would be good if you had a prayer wheel, you can actually spin all the time. So if it's a bit small.
Teni chirap le te tadina kato ju tamjeni songa teni nyama bolu songa teni shesin te pe ta pecha lojang namni tamche pe kashe cheshe tse yore te tsen dor teni teni shene ta lang tong tong shene rap da teni pa lang tong ka songa teni shene te sem te rap da teni ma teni sem rangwang chu sem ka ya ya de to ka te na rāng sīngu nēru rāng rāng tōgō yōre tīsi tātā rāng mā tōgā dā kāng rī jīna nā tōgā nyū mā bā kāng jīna jī shokī jānda tīni yīngwāng jīni shōn tōgō yōre tīni jī kāng rī jīna pēnā yīngwāng jīni shōsō tīni yīngwāng rāng tāngchē dēwā tī yīngwāng tāngchē dōngē jīyōsō tīni sāpār tī nyū mā bā wāng tī shōsō tīni mē tō sāng tīli tā sēmgī nā sāng tīli nyū mō bā chā jōrī tīli sēmgī nā lōk tī māntōng nā tīli lē jī lōng tī jī nā tōng lē jī lōng kā rā tā nyū mōng pē rā shētāng nā rāwāng mē bā tō nā sē nā tī tī wāng tī shētāng kī lyōng ā kā sē lē sā tō yō rē tā tī yī wāng jī rē tī sēmgī nā lōk nē tī tī nā pā nā sēmgī nā shēnē rā shāb tā tī mbē sēm rāwāng tō sēmgī nā lōk khā kō nā 생각하는 게 되더니 딴 하다에 자대에 녹아치면 까르다 봐서 되니 작진 독지 가는 세부제 내려돼서 되니 제가 저 당시 대승은 내려 통화는 통 남카는 통화나 저 밤에 자고 해서 데려오던 거요래 그냥 그만 듣고를 안 게디 이제 대바시란 야만용 뜻이돌이 그자 이 시험을 되는 거랑 냠냠을 파지 남도도 시험을 했지 남도도 시험을 되는 남도 매번 탑이요 이제 들들이 작탑 나바나서 때네 아니 남도 매번 선데 문제마다 사진을 되는 제가요 남도 매번 선데 상통되는 En als de water nam gaat de water nam toch het. Ik niet zo'n semi nam ga je maar nam toch een zo'n madina. Sinds dat er met de hazen. Dan chiba, dat al een chiba, chiba de jongen zo. Die jongen baatje, raar nog voor doosje. Dat je toen de schari daar was samen de tegelijk die 사고도 그 시험할 때 이 받침을 때 기본 땡기다 실리다 상승권이 그다 대비하고도 그냥 로바트게 고도요 마샤프지 답지 고도요에 대외더니 애더니 안데시 야로시 대공부 대지요래 그냥 남이지만 답지를 하죠 나도 양고서 간이 요리 시간이 미실 답지라 그냥 나게 되는 데서 통 작요래
So next are the parameters of meditation, meditative concentration, and then wisdom. And so here, first for meditative concentration, it speaks about the insight that is grounded in calm abiding. So now especially regarding the paramita of wisdom, actually, that can be explained by the great scholars for many days. Actually, the prajna paramita, the perfection of wisdom, is one of the most important scriptures of study. So it can be explained very extensively, and I will just explain that in brief. Now, this shamatha, this calm insight, which is grounded in calm abiding. What must happen is that we must attain this autonomy of freedom, where we are able to abide at will. So you can place the mind in its natural state and then stay there. So that's the kind of freedom, that self-control that must be attained. And so why is it that we lack this control over our mind now? It is because whatever afflictive emotion and thought arises in the mind, we are completely overtaken by the force of that affliction. So we become completely controlled by it. It is said all freedom is happiness, and all lack of freedom or being controlled by other is the cause of suffering. So these thoughts and afflictive emotions are like the seeds of a flower that we accumulate in our mind. And later, then they are those karmic winds that we are bound to follow, that will take us. So, for example, anger arises, you become overtaken by the anger, it controls you. Then you engage in all sorts of activities with your body and speech. You accumulate karma. You are controlled by the hatred, the anger. You have no self-control. Now, here, shamatha, insight, which is grounded in calm abiding, refers to attaining this stability of not becoming controlled. So ideally, you understand the nature of the mind. You have realized that the nature of mind is like space. Or in Dzogchen, it is referred to as the original purity. Whether it is Mahamudra or Dzogchen, we are speaking about the true natural state of the mind. And in order to realize the space-like nature of the mind, first of all, it must become free from clouds, like a cloud-free sky. And again, there is much to be explained along those lines, and I have not myself studied that so much on an intellectual level, so I don't know how to perhaps explain that. I'm just really speaking from my own personal experience of that. So the point here is that must be pacified, first of all. But that doesn't mean that no thoughts arise. Thoughts will still arise in the mind, but they must not affect the mind, so you don't follow those thoughts. And then when you rest within that thought-free state, which doesn't grasp at thoughts, then you recognize Mahamudra or Vipassana. You gain this insight in the nature of the mind, which is then like a cloud-free sky. Lord Chigden Sumgön had said, unless the clouds of the thoughts obscuring the sky of the mind itself do not vanish, the luminosity of the planets and stars, the luminosity of the two planets and stars, which are the two kinds of knowledge, will not emerge. So the two kinds of knowledge will emerge when the clouds of thinking is cleared away from the mind itself. So these two kinds of knowledge are the knowledge, the wisdom realizes things as they are, and then the knowledge that knows all the things in their extent, everything that exists. So it refers to the relative and ultimate knowledge. And on an ultimate level, there is no contradiction, but I, again, do have that fault of not knowing to explain that very clearly in words. That is why we have also Khenpo Tenzin, who can explain that to you very well, the nature of calm abiding and special insight. Now, he has studied the scriptures on that, and there are many disciples who have an interest in this field of knowledge. Very many intelligent disciples are interested in knowing about that and hearing about those commentaries. And then there's also those like myself who just like to practice. And so for them, there's also many like that. And so for them, then there is me who shares just some personal experiences.
심진놈 사제 심진 삼지 사제 말에 심장마서 거래 심장마서나 다다다 신내를 되는 신내를 배나 초천 소탈그 방와 드니 사신 사주심 사신 위저와 방와 저와지 담지 심시하는데 바타코네 드니 뭐도 맞춰와 드니 소탈거니 니바라데니 드니 뭐 방고서 야모시에서 다 철도는 다 삼디 송달 차대요 심신에 송달 차대요 드니 신에는 다 토르려 가래 신에는 좀 다도 랑통데 그 세군내로 문에 들었더니 다리니 매봐 드니 저 남시의 시지 내려만 통과는 남시이지 남발치 봐서 다던 인이요래 다스로 요만 시요래 랑 세분 내려도 하고 그러면 대회는 남시 이송 말아리베 남시다 이식이 제발 제도 데르지네 뜻사고 양과 작아도 남시다 이식이 제발 가래 새끼 남시데 마도 봐서만 남시래지 남시 참말은 요래도 샘대 온리는 남시 요래 데르 다진이 요래 데르 남시래지 다 되려 사 28들이 20대도 자와 당시 일로도 저들 내lok대 또 좀들 고대니 매봐 빼는 것에서 뭐 이제 찍송 거래 이제 들리도 너는 좀좀씩 나지니 무덕성 하고서는 들 생구대로 또 그래 대회는 들 남시대 이식이 제발 때 다다 신의 좋은지 라동대가 20도 그래 그래서 남시대가 다 누구만 내철다 누구만 리와다 먹이와 노래들 남시들 좀 무고당 심말을 심바지 심말을 줘봐지 다심지 초와 될 롱주고다 될 덴반지네 야물 땡이리 야물 문에 말이 될 초와 쪽고니 디슬 될 무고 심마자디 너도 차한 건 너는 sempre 무고 민나디 sempre 초와 너도 차 내가 지금 가지고 양 도덕을 내가 차는 신이네. 양 동의는 때마다 라시지 않고 신이 신 통하면 좋았대도 제일 디스비도 동의 just 너는 무엇도 심말을 심하대. 들 때려지는 니매와 하고 som잖아. 들이 좀 왔다 어디. 오 심적이래. 심적이 나들이 좀이래. 대라고 과다 모두 차는데 심님에는 니면은 시도 상통도 니매와 하고 대상통을 했지. 다다들 나도 세번 탈렀더니 다다 기반이자 이제 김보태는 보지는 양당한테 대소는 평사 소속 기반이자 거들 선은 마땅 대마서 남도 까고 하고도 별로 내당 볼까나. 그때 기반이자 이제 대비 페모를 그때 신의 너는 남도대 까마고 인가 되고 초당랍게도 마 셔트바티 그래야지.
So, now just regarding this verse that Bachikten Sumgyön from before, and this is like the culmination of the 6 paramitas. And in the beginning, it all starts with, as before, the difficulty of finding a precious human birth and so forth, all the stages of the path. All of these stages of the path up until this point are actually for the sake of cultivating shamatha, calm abiding, a meditative state. So of course, ultimately, the goal is to attain enlightenment. In order to attain enlightenment, the Buddha said, completely tame your own mind. So this means mind. Even though the Buddha also said all beings are actually Buddhas, they still have to purify their mind. And we do that by practicing, accomplishing shamatha, a state of calm abiding. And this pacifies the confusion in the mind. According to the path of individual liberation, the afflictions are abandoned. In the Bodhisattva path, they are transformed. So all of these are only a method to achieve a state of calm abiding, to not become controlled by the afflictive emotions. And in the individual liberation, one recognizes first the fault of the afflictive emotions. But in brief, it is all for the sake of achieving the state of calm abiding, to realize the mind after that. Because what's the ultimate fruition of calm abiding? It then leads into vipassana, or this special insight, seeing the nature of the mind, the true nature of the mind that is devoid of self and other. And this is when the consciousness transforms into primordial wisdom. So for as long as we don't see the true nature of the mind, we see a duality of self and other. And at that time, we refer to that mind as the consciousness. Consciousness projects outward and discerns various external objects. But it doesn't look inward, and it doesn't know its own true nature. And Milarepa actually explained clearly the difference between the consciousness and primordial wisdom. So what is the difference? Sentient beings who have not realized the nature of mind have a consciousness. We all have a consciousness. Whoever has a mind has a consciousness. And that consciousness perceives the duality of self and other. And then there is wisdom. There is the wisdom deities, for example. It is that within the expanse of primordial wisdom, all the Buddhas are one. When one realizes the nature of mind, one realizes that samsara and nirvana are indivisible. So that is what one realizes finally. Even if we cannot understand it on a large, vast scale, what we need to understand is self and others are not separate. In the Samantabhadra prayer, for example, this is referred to as the single basis. So it is the true nature of the mind. Now, regarding the difference between the consciousness and wisdom, when one accomplishes calm abiding, one gains insight into the nature of the mind, or vipassana. So at the time when there is consciousness, consciousness discerns various objects and also various afflictive emotions that arise, virtuous and non-virtuous thoughts and so on. But there is clinging, a belief in the true existence of whatever appears, and one labels them. One gives them certain attributes. And so a feeling arises, and one completely indulges in that feeling, believes that this is how it is, believes in the truth of that feeling, that experience, and either thinks that it is true or it is not true. So the 6 kinds of feelings or sense sensations grasping at them cause the mind to solidify into this solid entity that actually doesn't exist. Even though the mind is insubstantial, it becomes like this solid thing due to the clinging fixation to our experiences. So at times we are distracted by pleasurable experiences of bliss. We cling to them and we are distracted. And then when it is taken from us, often we cannot bear that and even commit suicide. So that kind of mind who experiences all of that cannot actually be seen, and yet it has all of these experiences and feelings. So these feelings become so solid because of our grasping, our belief in their true existence. Someone who realizes the nature of non-duality knows that all of this is just an illusion. Actually, there's only this one mind. There might be a diversity in bodies, but there's only one mind. That's actually the first thing to understand, the non-dual mind. And that is what inside Vipassana realizes, the non-dual mind. So meditation is a skillful means to pacify all these thoughts and fixations in the mind. And one good method to do that is the meditation called the 4 kinds of placing of one's mindfulness, the 4 kinds of mindfulness in brief. And actually, Khenpo Tenzin Rinpoche can explain that very clearly to you. Again and again, I request him to teach that to you. Because in the beginning, for a beginning practitioner, if we don't use these tools, like those 4 kinds of mindfulness, to reflect upon, it will be very difficult to deal with our thoughts that arise in the mind. That is why these teachings are very beneficial. So in brief, when it comes to shamatha, calm abiding, it's not about rejecting thoughts. We can't really reject our thoughts, but we let them dissolve naturally, just like a wave on water.
대외라 랑 넘버 좀 시세네 소타도 상승을 남나 까빠서 저라 많이마 니모 이실이 저트에 뛰다는 바이오를 랑 통다와들 대대 차야 버리지 대대는 니모는 바이 줌이 이제래 야다 대바에서 다 소단을 하나 돼서 고방을 다 줌이 이제시 바들더니 다 남카타에 오 세번대로 우리 뒤에는 다 rab들 딱도 땅 뜨는 남카를 차요 뭐래 제가 초하고 양지 마시고 또 생각이 남카다 우리 양 남카다 우리 사람들 밖에 샤르면서 근데 생각이 우리 레데 고아 샤르면서 제 가는 생 남카다 옛날이야 제 남카다에 대해 뒤는 심지 남발시 봐게 다 남시지 랑 이실 돌마도 다 납시디 다스진 로아로 콘데니아데 생구세도 저는 남아시바가 제도 단 타이바레 다 책내는 분이 하고 요거와서 하고 돈당부터 하고 나더니 자라더니 저바테 쇼무서 때렸더니 남신 타에 드리고 같이 들려 아들들이 어찌하면 봐 오, 다 sempre 다 사자치 보셔야 돼요. 쟤는 mesela 저기 딱강 마삽 대야는 거 살이지. 오, 대저 고아지 초아리지. 너바리지 뭐살이. 요미 메미지. 오, 다 sempre 책가디는 책가디는 고아라오나. 다 sempre 원마다와 책가디는 시에도 다 요바야 마디지 메바야 마디지. 다 요미 메미지. 가야마티 대결을 하사래 대로 뛰는 너는 심 차이 차와냐니 제보거든 너가 차이 차와티 쇼무요래 예 대고서지 냐미지 진짜 차이 차와티 다 저거요 뛰는 마음에 미친 배전 바대는 친구요래 바대 뭐지나 바대 최근에 쳤다 뭐는 대선 총총 하죠 담만 많이 베대 다 하고 요래 이제 막 차와더니 따도라 그 하고 다 하고 또 보여 말이 내가 실수를 봐서 거에 살에 들자는데 기본적인 이제 나는 내가 지금 당 나관 타에 남진 타에 tiang me pa yo me ti je se we de lo mi kwa te to ne lo te yo le sha lo le te sha wa te nzi yo yo le te ve te zumi je le ya na de ba te rin za ba te te so ni tori ge te do sha do te la so pa ta bi ne ka te la tori yo mo tin lang ji she do yo le te ta ta ba chi ji yo tin she le yo tin no yo do ta tok sa ji ge ko ma to ba le te ba chang go yo sa le te je de ta te to ma so ti nyam yo ma le zumi le ya da de pa stampi on va casser la ni so.
So it says, disturbing emotions are destroyed by insight, grounded in calm, abiding. So a sign that one has attained insight, vipassana, is that one's ability to transform afflictive emotions into wisdom. And so if we can't transform them, then we have not attained vipassana. So we realize the true nature of the afflictive emotions, which actually happens on the secret mantra path. According to individual liberation and the Bodhisattva path, without rejecting the afflictions and without even transforming them, they are directly recognized and thereby transformed into wisdom, or primordial wisdom. And so that really is the view of vipassana, that is grounded in shamatha, or calm abiding. Then it says, knowing this, cultivate meditative concentration that purely transcends the four formless absorptions. So those four formless absorptions, first there is the absorption called infinite space. So first you meditate and you look at the nature of the mind, and this space-like experience arises. You feel that, oh, mind is really like infinite space. So there is this very subtle grasping that is present. You enter in a very subtle grasping of conceptualizing, thinking that mind is really like infinite space. And although it is true that the nature of mind is infinite like space, it becomes an obscuration to really realizing the nature of the mind, because we cling or we grasp, we have this concept of mind is like infinite space. And that is why the consciousness is not yet completely liberated into primordial wisdom. So the consciousness is the one who creates all of samsara and nirvana. So then one lets go of that grasping that it's like space, but then one realizes this consciousness is just so vast. It creates all of samsara and nirvana. Consciousness is infinite. And so that's then the next grasping that arises, this concept of thinking consciousness is infinite. It really is infinite. And while it is infinite, the concept of it, grasping at this concept, is still a grasping thought. So that's the second absorption, infinite consciousness. And then transcending that fixation, one moves up to the third absorption, which is nothing whatsoever. For example, in Mahamudra we are told, without a single thought, look decisively at the ultimate nature of the mind. So then one might think that it is just fine if this being said, it is fine if I just stay there without thinking anything. And even that in itself is a very subtle form of grasping. This also is a concept. So then you realize that and you transcend that concept too. And you come to the fourth absorption, which is called neither existing nor non-existing. So then that again is an understanding that is based on those words that one has heard. For example, the words as explained according to the Madhyamaka, the middle way, that tell you don't grasp at the existence of things and do not grasp at the non-existence of things. So don't grasp at existence or non-existence. It's neither. So then you think that I can just stay without grasping at either existence or non-existence. And then again, because it's based on this intellectual understanding, you enter into a very subtle grasping. So now the grasping is extremely subtle, but you enter into this grasping, and therefore this grasping becomes an obscuration to your practice. It's a very subtle feeling. It is that it is not appearances that bind you, but it's your grasping at them that bind you. So first we allow the mind, therefore, to settle down so it becomes like pure water. So there is no grasping. And when there is no grasping, then a real understanding arises. But then the moment we begin to enter into grasping, even in a very subtle way, again, we cannot really understand the nature of the mind. And so this is really what we call this very subtle obscuration to omniscience, to knowing the true nature of the mind. And again, that's something that Khenpo Tenzin will explain to you more. So these are the 4 kinds of meditative, of formless absorptions. It is infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothing whatsoever, and neither existence nor non-existence. So these gradually may arise throughout one's practice. And then these are the kind of grasping thoughts that one might enter into. And so it says, knowing this, one should cultivate meditative concentration that purely transcends those 4 formless absorptions. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. So even if you do not transcend them, even if you enter those 4 formless absorptions, it still actually leads to birth in the higher realms. It still, according to the Dharma, is considered to be a good quality. You, for example, take birth as a god, like in the 6 realms, as a desire god, and so on. So you still find the qualities of the higher realms, but it still prevents you from attaining the ultimate state of enlightenment. So it does become an obscuration to the attainment of enlightenment. So this is as much as I can explain on that, just from my own personal experience.
Zumbi J. Tova, the Sima Jim Hashivore, Jimore, Gobdam, Tenaging the young, the young Gotini, guard of Travas. Guard of Travas. Oh, that is Diore, David Sawati, David Sawati, Chanel, Devachimbo, Shanekon, David Nature, Nepam, Dramaka. So, oh, Tiller, Sim Sawati, Simba Tavo, the market. God of Travachi, so, oh, Tita Sharon, what is to buy your massage? What shall I charge? Oh. The young to go on the Diligence market. Nepa Madrid, Joam Magadi. Angie not to show on the death of Magadi, Yayana, but Charles up on the pie Yayana, the Nimaran, the young Tanyado, called young dinner, young community. Not to pie Yayana, answer on me, or each other left and me, or young. 또는 양땅 또는 대사 갖고 지마지마 이소 라마들이 라마체들 뭐 체마를 이게 팀뭐 데라서 간 랑지 태som 차와지 태som 차와 이거를 대답을 되네 태som 차와들이 랑지 미고를 맞아서 저게 대람장이 갖고요 대변들이 Zumijiri yana there was something on Bajaselani and Donna Nawakari, Nepam, Joamakato. That's a Toashan Pai Yaja. Yago was ready.
So these experiences of these 4 formless absorptions, they do arise. So especially if one is a meditation practitioner, now these experiences will arise in our practice. But the point is now, how do we deal with them when they do arise? So the point is to neither reject them nor accept them, but to just remain still in meditation. So with each of those experiences that arises, each of those feelings that arises, actually these experiences often arise as a quality of calm abiding. They come along with calm abiding. They're connected to this aspect of stability of calm abiding. So the instruction is that when anything arises, grasping thought arises, it says that do not try to accomplish abiding, and do not try to reject the movements of the mind, the thoughts. So do not even engage in the most subtlest of thoughts, but also do not reject whatever arises. So you stay in this loose, natural state without thinking that a thought is something undesirable, I need to reject that. Just feel that whatever arises, let it arise. Let arise anything that may, but do not engage in it. Do not develop this fixation of, like, I want this experience again and again, for example. Don't develop that kind of thought. And whatever else arises, don't try to reject an undesirable thought. So not rejecting it means to let it be as it is, just naturally. It arises and it will go away on its own, just like a wave on water. Through habituation, so later on, as you keep practicing, eventually it will just naturally dissolve. So it begins with understanding that and knowing how to do that. Then it becomes an experience, secondly. So then you practice that and it becomes a personal experience. You experience how when a thought arises and you just let it be on its own naturally, you observe how it dissolves on its own into itself, just like a wave dissolving into the water. So that's the experience that takes practice for a long time. And that leads to realization. And that is, of course, a little bit difficult in the beginning. It requires a long time of practice. And sometimes also it happens when a really authentic guru with compassion comes together with an authentic disciple with devotion. And sometimes there is no doubt within the mind. But sometimes even the subtlest of doubts naturally arises in the mind, and then you just let it be naturally. And that's the only way you can really deal with it. And you have to let it be naturally and allow it to dissolve on its own. It is very difficult to instantly just make it disappear. So it requires some time and practice. So here, transcending the four formless absorptions, in brief, the instruction here is do not reject what arises, and do not try to accomplish deliberately abiding. Just let it all be. Even the slightest sensation of feeling that arises, let it all be as it is and allow it to dissolve on its own.
Langtong Dawa de la Sakina, the Techigan Jevayo Sari, Chayala Malari Bendasona, Salanzimi, Ransem Des, Shundab Impang Washila, Techik Tarasamai song, or Tasar Dino, or Nampo Chitamebati, Sentoman Namkata, Seminero Namkata, the Sao Hakosma, there's a Thompson joke, or Sartomson joke. So doctor Kakamaiba, Savarandi, the Tomba, the Sava, Ben Drumetaver, Chuntung to Drumetaver. The Chiolata, Namkata, the Nero Namkata, young, till more machine, that's empty. Then you read the Saji, the Marxin Kovan Chan, the Unaman, the Small. They did that, Hakoson, oh. 살 동지 모든 집에 저 직장에 봐 사고하고 쉽게 좀 나가다 차용을 때라 다이 메다 나가다 답시 때라 좋아 직장 마치 라기 야야나 다시 저 라심랑 라드레스 람종레스 이 맞다면 셈 람종 이니시라서 라종이 받다라 또 남카다에 차도 남카는 이용을 가가요 말이 더블 가송나 대도 하고 니딩 따와서 저런 걸 따뜻이들이다 상토가 따 문에지 무진고 사례
So the view of Vipassana or special insight is related to the single-pointedness of Mahamudra, this stage of single-pointedness. Regarding that, Milarepa had said, when you remain in the clarity of mind without grasping, allowing all thoughts to dissolve into themselves, then you recognize the spontaneously existing luminous state, this clarity which recognizes that. And that is the completion of single-pointedness. So clarity, remaining with clarity, is to be fully aware of the thought-free, empty, space-like mind. To clearly know that the mind is empty, there's this clear consciousness. And so that is what we call this unity of clarity and emptiness. Unity means that they are not separate, indivisible. So that is the nature of clarity is emptiness. The nature of emptiness is clarity. A smaller example is it is like a fire flame. And a larger example is it's like space. So even though the nature of the mind is like space, we don't recognize that. And if we don't recognize that, we are sentient beings. The Samantabhadra prayer says, if you recognize it, you are a Buddha. Not recognizing it, you are a sentient being wandering in samsara. So when you recognize it, then you know, now I have seen it. This clarity and emptiness, clear and empty awareness. You recognize it clearly when you let go of all grasping at any true existence of whatever arises, and you just abide within clear awareness. And even in just an instant, you glimpse the space-like nature of the mind. So at that moment, when you abide within this space-like state, there is no thought at all of it either being this or not being that. There is not even the slightest feeling of it is infinite space or it is infinite consciousness. And so this lack of grasping comes from allowing the mind to rest naturally. And so that is what was meant with the spontaneous existence of the mind, which is the self-arisen nature of the mind. For example, this is how it is referred to in the 7 verses of supplication to Tara for protection. The self-arisen mind that is non-dual primordial wisdom, it says in that text. So a sign that the mind is self-arisen is that it is like space, and within space there is no duality or division. Wherever you go in the universe, there is no duality in space. So this actual view of Vipassana or insight into the nature of the mind arises when you let go of all grasping whatsoever.
The Kamitratan, the Batavatia, the Kami, Dandin, the Mazela, Dandin, the Niga do it on the Javan, the Teton drama, the Santos of Dangores. The Santos of Dangores, Tony, Ninget, and the Wagomba, so fascination to Kaigo, Jabro, 당상 쪽에는 진비 로탄제네 중 탐시 다디니 마종이 직접요 말에 그 돈이를 속마자는 진짜로 속다거래서 바로 뭐지 대송 롱주 강에 대해서 거래 대속 장로들이 니지가 니지 돈이 차대요래 가에 차도 빼는 이는 니지 깝들이도 다 내가 차대 좋아들 야 이는 니지 세를 딱 봐도 말에 다 차대 인샤를 다 잡아는 내가 차대 대기 용되는 데는 사제에 하고는 돈이 니게 던져가 공부하대 내가 보면 다시 니들한 돈을 이렇게 좋아지게 되어서 되면 내 당신도 힘기라 사바된 진짜를 속담들이 다른 동생이 봐 랑동생이 봐들 대처매 봐 너무 고용을 너무 고하지 랑동생이 봐 라게 이렇게 왔더니 용전이 양당한테 조랑 탐지는 용 조랑 탐지는 낭나도로 짤당지는 나도를 위해 짤정을 정고에 또 드는 정탈들은 보절매 봐 들긴 가끔 한 번씩 왔더니 다가 정토 고번 창조 조랑 탐지를 세고래서 그것이 이제 다 계속해 보통 또 통을 또 당소 법안념이 되니만 뭐 하자 책들들 리치 뭐래 전 타톡들이 다디 랑통은 타톡 왔다 시합을 해 시합는 거고요 시합들라
And so then, why is it then that despite our practice still, those subtle grasping thoughts do arise in our mind? It is because we have not eliminated self-grasping. Of the 4 maras, this is referred to as the mara of self-conceit. So for as long as there is this demon of self-grasping present, we will always develop all sorts of doubts. So at this point, therefore, we must first make a greater effort in the training in bodhicitta. And Pato Rinpoche had said that meditation is to unify, to join the empty mind with compassion. And that is the purpose of all meditation practices, starting with taking refuge and then on the path of altruism and cultivating bodhicitta. There is not a single fault that does not arise from self-grasping. So what Pato Rinpoche really said was that instead of making a great effort in meditating on emptiness, you should make a greater effort in cultivating compassion. And this is actually mentioned in many of the other scriptures as well. And so that is because when you cultivate compassion, the very nature of compassion is emptiness. So when compassion for others arises, at that moment you should look at the state of your mind. There is no concept of a self at that moment. So a moment when you think of others, you're not thinking of a self. And when this concept of a self arises, then you are not thinking about others. So that's the quality that the Buddha had realized. So practice or meditation means to unify the empty mind with compassion. And this is often also why many beginning practitioners grow tired of practice, even though they make the greatest effort in meditation, calm abiding, and looking at the nature of the mind, or vipassana. They still get tired of it because they lack the basis of love and compassion. So a true, authentic state of vipassana is one where you are free of any doubts. So first, you must have an understanding of this authentic vipassana, have a real understanding and trust in that. Secondly, you must gain an experience. That means you have to practice it over and over again in all your daily activities. You must train the mind. You must train the mind as the thoughts and the afflictions arise. And then finally, there is realization. And that is then through the training, through the experience, that leads into realization, which is an unchanging state. And at that point, no circumstance can affect you one or the other way any longer. For example, in the Vajrayana practice that many of you do, it says, may the fortress of the view be gained. So first, you understand the view. Then secondly, may the abyss of meditation be crossed. So that is, you cross the abyss of meditation or this dangerous path of meditation by applying the practice in your day-to-day activities. And then thirdly, it says, may the life force of the conduct be seized. So then when understanding of that arises, when you apply things in your conduct, then it leads to realization and stability. So these words of the Vajrayana actually are very meaningful, and they really show the ultimate meaning of vipassana, or the insight into the nature of the mind. And so ultimately what vipassana really is a perfection of wisdom.
강성의 시랍 메이나 바로 생각에 조사제 도발문을 위해서 시랍이나 바로도 서만 나지 롱아도 그래서 배세 야요래 다지는 게 지나다 세상에 동반이 말이 최저 본부 제체 제동은 타톡 사제제 고막 토버체드 성을 시합직부터 달아 성을 제 맞지 탑 지금은 탑 공리공대배 탑 공리공대배 탑이 떠서 배라 성월에 대회에 파로드스 버토고 좁아져고 동진 탑도 시랍고 동들에 시랍은 파로드스 마송 사례라 다에 시랍도 파로시는 시랍은 뭐 참막은 거 요래 동지기 요래 뒤동자들 시랍 동 시랍 파로드스 동지 양당양도 로라 이 동 참아 요걸 양당양도 로 양당양도 마다와 동반이 자장세제데 동반 시바데 니 우린 치마리 상이 차 참아 라바니 좀 차와 남도 세군지 말라 이들이 말말 이들이 태동 로스 이들이 로를 태동지데 태동은 남도래 대회 시랍 파라도스 맞을 때 처음 매와 차거래 들들 탑이 시랍이는 바로 생각 조사지 도발문을 위해서 탑당대 세상 탑지다 이해래 탑 이제 진보대 윤리기는 라미가 다dim에 봐서는 우리 사바팀이 되게 재미있는 지금이 라미기 요래 또 못하게 들다다 냐들 라고하니 냐들 요래 대답을
So the next is the perfection of wisdom, and that is really the ultimate fruition of calm abiding. So it says, without wisdom, the other five are not enough to reach complete enlightenment. Thus, combined with skillful means, develop the wisdom that does not distinguish among the three spheres. This is the way of a Bodhisattva. So without wisdom, it is said, the other five perfections are just like being a blind person. So when you hear that, then you might think that, so all of the things I have practiced until now are just empty and mean nothing then. But that's also not true, because the 84,000 Dharma teachings are all taught in order to attain enlightenment. So that, in other words, means that they are only taught in order to realize this perfection of wisdom, all for that purpose. They are all a method for that to arise, like those three methods for bodhicitta to arise, where it has not arisen, to not let it decline, where it has arisen, and to further increase it. The method to further increase it is the practices of the secret mantra. And so all the practices, all the paramitas, are for the sake of finally realizing wisdom, to perfect wisdom. The Buddha had perfected wisdom, had realized the nature of the mind. Actually, the meaning of all of that is contained in the Heart Sutra, for example, the meaning of the perfection of wisdom. And actually, when you read it over and over again, then the meaning of that will really arise within your mind. The Heart Sutra, for instance, the perfection of wisdom speaks of emptiness. And so then when you read that, what falls apart are these fixations of things really exist, that's real. All these subtle and coarse thoughts that arise in our mind, even the subtle thoughts of just clinging to very small thought and just thinking this is how it is, or to have certain doubts in the mind. For as long as we perceive a duality of self and other, there are doubts in the mind. And doubt itself is just a thought. So when you really understand the perfection of wisdom, when that is accomplished, then a sign of that is that all doubts will disappear. There's no more doubt. So it says combined with skillful means. So as we mentioned before, there is those three skillful means: to make it arise, to not let it decline, and so on. So, but the actual skillful means is actually compassion. And when compassion arises, then self-grasping is naturally absent. So when real immeasurable love and immeasurable compassion arise, then skillful means has been combined with wisdom. And so then combined with skillful means, one develops the wisdom that does not distinguish among the three spheres.
rāng sēkwe dēluk tōsma, tēki nima kaya janagi re, tē tāwe tē kōngu re, tē kādiwi kōla tē shiāpja pārada sēmbāi, chūpōng jē chē tōnga tāwa sāngchok sēmna tā sōng, sāngchok sēmna tē tam sāngchok sēm, tē tōpa tabla kōngchok sāngchok sēm sōngwa re, tab jibā kōngchok sāngchok sēm re, tē jamdōni ngō tē tab yeno, tē tab tē tab tamchi tē nō rāgu yo re,
So first, through love and compassion, the four immeasurables, self-grasping disappears. Then once that has disappeared, then you look at the nature of others. And then when you look at them from that state, they naturally become empty. So that's the skillful means. And then the wisdom that does not distinguish among the three spheres is that all phenomena of samsara and nirvana, self and other, are empty of self-nature. All appearance is just the display of mind. When one realizes the nature of the mind, one sees it just like that, as just a display of the mind itself, like a reflection. And when that is perfected, it becomes the perfection of wisdom. So the 84,000 Dharma teachings are all included within bodhicitta, and that is included within ultimate bodhicitta. And in order to realize the ultimate bodhicitta, the teachings on the relative bodhicitta are taught. So the relative bodhicitta is a skillful means to realize ultimate bodhicitta. When we take the refuge vow, we are told, tap this is the method, this is the skillful means. And so from there on, all practices become a skillful means to realize that.
Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Thank you, Aisha.
Thank you.
Everybody.
He's always here.